You've eaten cow. You've eaten chicken. You've probably eaten pig, sheep, maybe deer if you're lucky. But you've never eaten lion. You've never eaten wolf. You've never even been tempted to order tiger at a restaurant. Why not? It's not illegal everywhere. It's not even always dangerous. So why does the thought alone make your stomach turn? The answer isn't really about taste. It's about something far older than cuisine. Around the world, in almost every culture that has ever existed, humans have avoided eating carnivores. Not occasionally, almost universally. Anthropologist Marvin Harris spent decades studying food taboos across cultures, and he noticed the same pattern again and again. Grass eaters were food. Meat eaters were not. Cows, deer, rabbits, goats, fine. Lions, wolves, hyenas, eagles, off the table in almost every sense of the word. At first glance, this looks like coincidence, but patterns this consistent across continents that never spoke to each other are rarely accidents. Something is driving this, and that something starts a very long time before agriculture, before cities, before anyone had a word for taboo at all. Picture an early human group on the African savanna a few 100,000 years ago. Meat is valuable. Calories are scarce. A dead animal on the ground is a windfall. But not every dead animal is safe to eat. If you find a dead antelope, it probably died because something else killed it. Maybe a predator, maybe disease. You don't always know. But if you find a dead lion, the odds shift. A lion at the top of the food chain rarely dies from being hunted by something smaller. It's more likely to have died slowly, from infection, from parasites, from whatever sickness finally caught up to an animal that nothing else could catch. Here's the deeper problem. Predators eat other animals' flesh, which means predators are walking storage units for every parasite, bacteria, and prion that was living in their prey. Biologists call this bioaccumulation. Poisons and pathogens don't disappear as they move up the food chain. They concentrate. A lion doesn't just carry lion diseases. It carries a compressed history of every sick zebra, every infected buffalo, every diseased antelope it has ever eaten. Your ancestors didn't know the word parasite. They didn't understand bacteria. But they didn't need microscopes to notice a pattern. Groups who avoided apex predator meat got sick less often. Groups who didn't sometimes didn't survive long enough to pass on the habit. This is where the psychologist Paul Rosen enters the story. Rosen spent his career studying disgust, and he found something remarkable. Disgust isn't a taste preference, it's a disease-avoidance system wired directly into your brain, older than language itself. Foods linked to contamination, spoilage, or predators trigger a reaction that bypasses conscious reasoning entirely. You don't decide to be disgusted by rotten meat. Your amygdala decides for you, milliseconds before your mind catches up. Which raises the real question. If disgust evolved to protect you from disease, why would it single out predator meat specifically? Wouldn't any risky meat trigger the same reaction? This is where Daniel Fessler's work becomes essential. Fessler studied disgust across dozens of cultures and found something remarkable. Disgust isn't random. It clusters tightly around three categories: things that resemble death, things that resemble bodily waste, and animals that eat other animals' flesh. Predators check that third box perfectly. Your disgust system isn't just avoiding bad smells, it's avoiding anything that shares too much biological history with decay, sickness, and death itself. Now here's the twist. It isn't only about disease. There's a second layer buried underneath the first, and it's almost philosophical. When you eat something, ancient human logic treated it as more than fuel. Many hunter-gatherer belief systems carried an idea anthropologists call "you are what you eat," not as metaphor but as literal transferable essence. Eat a rabbit, and some cultures believed you absorbed its timidity. Eat a lion, and you might absorb its aggression, its unpredictability, its hunger for flesh, including yours. Predators occupy the same rung of the food chain as humans. They are competitors, not resources. Eating a competitor blurs a boundary your ancestors needed to keep sharp, the line between hunter and hunted. Think about that for a second. A grazing animal never competes with you for meat. A predator does. It watches you the same way you watch it. It sizes you up as a possible meal. Turning that relationship into food on a plate crosses a psychological line that grazing animals never approach. There's a third layer too, and it's the strangest one. Ecologically, apex predators are rare. A single lion needs dozens of prey animals to sustain it over a lifetime. Killing that lion for meat gives you a single, dangerous meal. Killing an antelope gives you meat with a fraction of the risk and effort. Anthropologists studying optimal foraging theory found predator hunting rarely made caloric sense at all. The math simply never favored it, which means the taboo wasn't just cultural superstition dressed up as tradition. It may have started as brutally practical economics, then calcified into disgust once it proved useful enough to keep. So 3 separate forces braided together over hundreds of thousands of years: disease risk from bioaccumulated toxins, a psychological boundary between hunter and hunted, and a caloric math problem that rarely paid off. Each one reinforced the others until the aversion stopped being a calculation at all. It became instinct. And instinct doesn't disappear just because civilization arrived. You can see the shadow of it everywhere today, even in places that have nothing to do with hunting. Notice how differently you react to a farm raising cows versus a facility breeding tigers for meat. One barely registers, the other feels wrong on a level you can't fully explain. That gap isn't logic, it's ancient wiring, still running quietly beneath modern life. You can even see it in language. Cultures across the world use predator eating as an insult or taboo marker, something reserved for outsiders, enemies, or the truly desperate. Few coincidences in human behavior run this deep, this consistently across cultures with no shared contact. There's something oddly comforting in that. Your gut reaction to the idea of eating a wolf isn't irrational. It's not a cultural accident either. It's a message passed down through hundreds of generations of ancestors who never met each other, who never spoke the same language, who never wrote it down anywhere. And yet the message survived intact. Don't eat what eats. It's a warning your body still remembers long before your mind forgot why. So the next time something makes your stomach turn before your brain can explain it, pause for a second. That reaction might not be random. It might be ancient. It might be the last surviving instruction from ancestors who never got the chance to write anything down, but found a way to pass the lesson on anyway. Through your body, through your instincts, through the very disgust you just felt. You've never eaten lion. You've never even considered it. And now you know exactly why.